Last Tuesday was crazy. Donald Trump had a historic win on Election Day 2024, and this was a red wave. No question about it. Republicans had a very strong performance this election cycle, not only in the presidential election, but also in the Senate race, as well as several House races across the nation. Donald Trump went 7 for 7 in the 7 swing states that were considered toss ups this election cycle. He won Arizona, he won Georgia, he won Michigan, he won Nevada, he won North Carolina, he won Pennsylvania, and he won Wisconsin. He won all of the 7 swing states in this election cycle. I wasn't even expecting this myself. I thought that Trump would at least lose 1 to 2 of the swing states, considering how, or at least I believed, that 45% of the country absolutely hated him and could not vote for him. Turns out I was wrong, and Donald Trump did better in many of these places than what I was expecting. Now, I still think my presidential prediction was pretty accurate for the most part, considering how the only state I got wrong was the state of Michigan, but Donald Trump really did well last Tuesday. Now, first, a short disclaimer. There are 3 misconceptions I need to just get out of the way regarding this election that I've seen online and some people do believe, especially people in the Harris campaign. And I'm not saying this as a Republican or a conservative, believe me, but I'm simply saying this. 1. Donald Trump did not win this election because of racism. Most of these areas which Kamala Harris lost, such as Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, as well as Ohio and Iowa, as well as Florida, they all elected Barack Obama as president 2 times in 2008 and 2012. North Carolina elected Obama in 2008. And this whole idea that America is a racist country is just fundamentally false. Just look at the fact that Barack Obama won America not once, but twice, and not narrowly, but by landslide margins in 2008 and 2012. So, yeah, America is not a racist country. Get that out of your head immediately. Second, Donald Trump won because of misogyny. This is not true at all, considering how many of these places like Wisconsin and Michigan also elected women on the same ballot that they elected Donald Trump. They elected Alyssa Slotkin as well as Tammy Baldwin for Senate on the same ballot that they elected Donald Trump for president. Nevada also elected Jackie Rosen for Senate. Arizona has elected 1 female senator as well as a female governor in their last 6 years. So, yeah, this whole idea that Kamala Harris lost because of misogyny is also false. Iowa also has a woman as their governor. So does even Alabama, for this matter. And then you look at some people who have claimed that Trump's win among Hispanics, especially in areas like Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona, was primarily due to misogyny. That is also false, considering how many of these Hispanic voters did, in fact, vote for Hillary Clinton to become president of the United States in 2016. So, yeah, that is fundamentally false. America is not racist, nor is it misogynistic. Now, the third misconception is that Donald Trump is going to eliminate democracy. This is not true. We have a system of checks and balances that can prevent the president from becoming all-powerful. And before you say that Donald Trump has complete control over Congress and the Supreme Court, and he can make himself a dictator, well, the Supreme Court has actually ruled against Donald Trump numerous times in his first term, and even after his first term. Just look at the Texas versus Biden Supreme Court case, and the plenty of Supreme Court cases where the court has ruled against Donald Trump. And plus, Trump was president before. You need to remember that. And if he really wanted to become a dictator, or if he could become a dictator, he would have done that already in his first term. And you may say that Congress is now more pro-Trump than it was in 2016. Well, Trump actually has a smaller House majority than he did back in 2016 when he first started off his presidency. He had 241 seats back then, and now it looks like best case scenario, he will have about 224 seats. So, yeah. Democracy isn't going anywhere. Democracy survived the Civil War. It survived like over 200 years of American history. Donald Trump it's not going to die because of Donald Trump. Let me just tell you that first. And the other thing also is that, yeah, democracy isn't going anywhere. And people who have drawn concern from the fact that Trump said he would be a dictator only on day one. Now, this is a statement I'm telling to both conservatives and liberals. Now, which is Trump is mostly all bark and no bite. If you believe that Trump is going to harm you, most of the time he's just saying stuff to get the support of his base. And if you think Trump is going to do a policy that is going to actively improve your life, again, most of the time he's just saying that stuff to appease you, or in some cases, just to get you annoyed. So, yeah, Trump is mostly all bark and no bite. Let's just get that out of the way. And people who are really like hung up or depressed or like jubilant over the election results, don't get too carried away. This is one election. Your fundamental life is not going to change that much because of one presidential election. All right, so then you may ask, why am I analyzing this? Well, let's just look at some data points and see what exactly caused Donald Trump to win this election by this much of a landslide. Now, when you look at the statistics in many of these areas like Texas, Trump won Texas by 14 points. This is the most since Mitt Romney in 2012, who won the state by 15 points. Many people were expecting Texas to be a little bit more competitive this cycle, and many Democrats who were hoping that Texas could eventually become blue because of the progress they have made over the past 8 years in the state. Well, this was not a good night for them, and all of those 8 years of progress appears to have faded away. Trump won Texas by more than Greg Abbott did in 2022, which is truly surprising to me. I was not expecting this. I thought Trump would win Texas by 8 points, best case scenario. He won it by 14. He improved his margins in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He also improved his margins in Houston. He lost Harris County, which is home of Houston, by simply 5 points, which is astounding for a Republican candidate. He flipped Williamson County, as well as many of these areas around Austin, which I believed would actually move left this cycle compared to 2020. Trump has proved me wrong in these areas, and it appears like the Austin area is moving to the right, and Democrats may have, unfortunately for them, hit their ceiling in many of these metro areas in Texas, such as Dallas, Austin, as well as Houston. You also look at the Rio Grande Valley. This was a huge win for Donald Trump there. He was winning counties like Starr County, which hasn't voted Republican since 1888 or 1892. All I know is it's been over 120 years at least since Starr County has gone Republican. In fact, let's look at the shift map in Texas. Now, New York Times did make the shifts look a little bit smaller. I don't know why they did that, but you can form your own interpretation there. But yeah, Trump did virtually better in every county in Texas, especially in South Texas near the Mexican-American border. And this wasn't the only border state which Trump vastly improved in. He also vastly improved in Arizona, and it looks like he is on track to win the state by 6 points, which is getting near Romney-McCain margins in the state. He also improved vastly in New Mexico and has made the state very competitive, to say the least. California, it also looks like he is improving in that state, and if you look at it, Harris's win in California so far is 9 points closer than Biden's in 2020. So, yeah, Trump did vastly better across the Southwest, and the main reason why is because of immigration. I think many people, especially Hispanics the most, ironically speaking for many Democrats, are the most upset over immigration, as well as the influx of migrants coming in from Mexico, mostly because, again, I think for them that would be a threat to their job security as well as prices for many of these working class voters, primarily Hispanics across the border. So that would most likely explain why Latinos moved so far to the right this election cycle. And that is one piece of the puzzle. But another question would be African American voters. African American voters did not actually move right as much as Republicans were expecting, because Democrats have mostly maintained their margins in Atlanta and the metro area surrounding it. However, it looks like the key reason why Trump was able to flip these areas like Georgia, as well as retain North Carolina, was primarily because black turnout lowered. Instead of black voters shifting to the Republican Party, it looks like they just didn't turn out as much for Kamala Harris as they did for Joe Biden 4 years ago. This could be, again, because the United States is no longer in a pandemic. and efforts to get African Americans to turn out 4 years ago were much more successful than they are in this election year. This has a huge effect on areas like Philadelphia, as well as Milwaukee, as well as Detroit, where fundamentally speaking, Donald Trump did a lot better than he did 4 years ago and even 8 years ago against Hillary Clinton. So, yeah, a key reason why he was able to win these states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, as well as Georgia was because of lower African American turnout from 4 years ago instead of some sort of seismic shift to the right. So that's two parts of the puzzle, and a third reason would be Trump improved vastly in rural white working class areas. I thought that he had actually already hit his ceiling in many of these areas, and there wasn't really that much room for him to grow. Turns out, again, I was wrong. Trump did significantly better in many of these other areas like Kentucky, Tennessee, where as well as Mississippi, Alabama, pretty much the entire South. Iowa, he did a lot better. That Seltzer poll was complete garbage. Indiana, Ohio. Yeah, Trump really ran up the margins in these rural areas, more so than 2016 and 2020. And Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania in particular, a key reason why Dr. Oz lost the Senate race there was because he couldn't run up the margins in rural Pennsylvania. Donald Trump was able to do this very successfully. Trump even improved in the suburbs compared to 2020. This is probably the biggest shocker of the night if you are a Democrat, which is why did Donald Trump do better in the suburbs surrounding Philadelphia? He also did better in many of the suburbs surrounding Detroit, even in Northern Virginia, an area which has been trending very far to the left, has Donald Trump improving in the suburbs surrounding Washington, D.C. So, yeah, why did Trump do better in the suburbs? Many people were expecting women to turn out in the suburbs for Kamala Harris, especially over the abortion issue. Now, I have a theory as to why these suburban women turned out for Donald Trump, or at least didn't turn out as much for Kamala Harris as much as the Harris campaign hoped. And Donald Trump actually did 4 points better among women this cycle than he did in 2020, even though women now have a chance to elect their first president in American history. So again, why did Trump do better with women, especially suburban women, this cycle compared to 4 years ago? My theory on that is education. This is a key reason why Glenn Youngkin won the Virginia race in 2021. I think many of these suburban moms do not like the quality of education, or at least what's being taught in their schools over the last 4 years. Now, again, I'm not putting my personal bias in here. I don't have really any opinion on the matter. This is just what I'm observing lately. I think education was a key reason why many women, especially in the suburbs, particularly mothers, in fact, went out there and voted for Donald Trump. Now, not all suburbs move to the right. There are still some suburban areas that move to the left, such as WOW, or also known as Ozaukee County, Washington, as well as Waukesha County, which moved to the left relative to 2020. So, yes, there is still some concern with Republicans in the suburbs, and Democrats do have some room to grow there. However, again, these results are by no means a good sign for the Democratic Party. There aren't really any positive takeaways I can think of if you're a Democrat this election cycle, because 4 years ago, Republicans did have some positive takeaways, which was, again, them doing better in the Rio Grande Valley, as well as Florida and areas such as Miami-Dade. But yeah, Democrats don't really have a lot of white pills for this election cycle. And speaking of Florida, Trump's performance there was just fantastic. He was able to win Miami-Dade County, which I didn't even expect. He flipped Hillsborough County, which is home of Tampa. He also won Duval County, which has Jacksonville. So Donald Trump has won 4 counties this election cycle that are actually 5 counties this election cycle that host NFL teams. Them being Brown County, which has the Green Bay Packers, Duval County, which has the Jaguars, Hillsborough, which has the Bucks, as well as Miami-Dade County, which has the Dolphins, and Maricopa County, which contains the Arizona Cardinals. And speaking of Maricopa, I was not expecting Donald Trump to win this county. He did so much better than I thought here, and yeah, Donald Trump really just had a fantastic night. All right, so let's look at the Senate elections now. The Senate Republicans did very well. They flipped Montana, Ohio, West Virginia. I was expecting that. But it looks like they are also on track to flip Pennsylvania. The Associated Press has called it for Dave McCormick. I don't know why the New York Times hasn't, but Dave McCormick is going to be the next senator from Pennsylvania. I was shocked by this. One of my friends, I even had a bet with him over who would win this race. I said Casey, he said McCormick. And yeah, it turns out he was right. Michigan and Wisconsin Republicans did a lot better there than I thought. Wisconsin, they narrowly lost by just 0.9%. Michigan, they lost by 0.3%. So Donald Trump clearly helped down ballot Republicans. They did better in Nevada also than expectations. So, yeah, Republicans underperformed Trump in many of these areas, which kept them from winning a huge Senate majority, but still, just a fantastic performance. Now, the House elections were kind of underwhelming for Republicans compared to the Senate and presidency. They didn't see any big gains here, probably because, again, of all the stuff that's been going on in the House over the past 2 years. But again, this is still pretty good for them if they're able to match their current House majority, which it looks like they are going to do based off of where they're leading in. I don't know why they don't call Arizona first for Schweikert. He clearly won that. So, but yeah, this is clearly just a landslide win for Donald Trump and the Republican Party. This is a red wave. The Democratic Party needs to do a lot of thinking on how they can get black voters to turn out in an election cycle where they are not too inspired. They also need to figure out how to take back many of these Hispanic and Latino voters who have moved to the Republicans, and they need to figure out how they can do better in these rural areas. They're not going to win them, but they need to find out a way for Republicans to maybe have lower turnout in these areas than they had this cycle, and they need to improve, especially in these urban areas where Trump did improve, particularly among working class voters. I believe Trump won a majority of the total working class this cycle, whether they were Hispanic, African American, or white. So the Democratic Party moving forward needs to move towards populism, not the democratic socialism of Bernie Sanders or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but rather just a form of left-wing populism that can appease many of these working class voters that have now moved towards Donald Trump and the Republicans. And Republicans, they just need to continue what they're doing because so far it looks like it is working for them. In fact, one prime reason why I thought that Donald Trump would win this election, this cycle, even though I didn't think he'd win by this much, I still expected him to win because of two reasons. One, he barely lost the 2020 election, and in that election, there was COVID, and even with that, he just lost by 42,000 votes in Wisconsin, Arizona, and Georgia. Two, I expected Trump to do fundamentally better among every demographic except for white women and women who were under the age of 30. Now, he did better among white women. I don't know if he did better among women under the age of 30 or not, but yeah, this was just fundamentally a landslide for Donald Trump. And congratulations to the Republican Party for this election. I'm by no means making this political. It's common courtesy to congratulate a party when they win an election by this much. And good luck to the Democrats and the Republicans over the next 2 years. And yeah, Mr. U.S. History, out.